Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Positively Trek Book Club. I'm Dan Gunther, and today we're going to be talking about a comic. So, with me, of course, to talk comics is the wonderful Brandi Jackala. Brandi, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. No one at home can see me, but I'm doing a little jig because I love to be the comics person.
Excellent. Yeah. Well, it's something to celebrate, right?
Yeah.
Doing comics. And this comic in particular, Star Trek Celebrations, this was a special issue released for Pride Month, which we just came out of. We're in July now, so Pride Month is behind us. But this came out right at the end of May to celebrate Pride Month, the month of June. So I'm really excited to talk about this one. It's just one comic issue we're talking about, but it's got 5 stories in it. And each of those stories highlights one or two particular LGBTQ plus characters in the Star Trek universe. So, I'm really excited about this because finally in 2024, we have a bunch of LGBTQ plus characters in Star Trek, which sadly for quite a long time, we didn't really. So I'm glad that we can have this issue that features a bunch of characters and doesn't even feature all of them.
Right. I know they didn't have room for everybody, which is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
And also in my heart, Pride Month is every month because...
Well, here. Absolutely.
You know, now I am not... I am not in any way queer, but that doesn't keep me from celebrating my friends who are. And frankly, most of my best friends, and I don't have a lot of really, really, really good friends because I'm picky, but a good half of them belong to that community. Mm-hmm. Like, and I was talking about this before, one of my favorite stand-up comedians is the lovely woman named Jackie Cation, and she is very, very pro-LGBTQ, and she talked about how her job is white lady meat shield, and that's what I am. I'm white lady meat shield. So if someone is harassing someone who identifies as queer in any way, I'm going to put myself in front of that person, whether it be physically or online or what have you, because, that needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very necessary part of the equation. And what's that famous saying? Like if you're standing up for a group and you're not getting hit by the rocks that are being thrown, you're not standing close enough or something like that.
Yeah.
I outwardly appear very much in the straight crowd. So I feel like, I kind of have to come out every so often. I am part of the B part of the LGBTQ plus spectrum. But, to meet me, you wouldn't necessarily know it. I'm in an opposite sex relationship, which, that's half of what the B people are into, right? Mm-hmm. So it sometimes has to come with an explanation, which is a little bit silly, but... Yeah. Anyway,
it's stupid. It's stupid.
Well, it becomes a default, right?
Right.
And I think sometimes it's good to remind people that, the default isn't necessarily I encountered this growing up as well because I'm Métis as well. So I'm part Cree native, and you wouldn't, again, know it generally by looking at me until I get really tanned in the summer. I just look like a white guy. And so, growing up, I heard all the jokes on the playground about Indians. And, I was not the toughest person in the world and didn't really stand up to people who were twice my size. So I had to stand there and listen to them. And that really sucked. Mm-hmm. So, you never know who you're talking to. And especially with something to do with that's not necessarily outwardly visible, like maybe sex or gender or race, something like LGBTQ, any of those, it's largely invisible. Mm-hmm. You can't tell just by looking at someone generally. So you never know who you're talking to. Don't stick your foot in your mouth.
Yeah. And as a neurodivergent person, I feel that. Because
another invisible, absolutely.
Yeah. So, we're all in this together, y'all. We're all in this together.
Absolutely.
So
For sure.
anyone who had a problem with this comic can bite my big white butt.
Why did my brain go to shiny metal ass?
I almost said that, but I wasn't sure that you wanted me to say ass on your podcast.
It's fine. We're Futurama fans too, so.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into the first story then. So this one is called The Knight Errand by Steve Orlando, with art by Lauren Knight and colors by J.P. Jordan. And this is a story featuring Hikaru Sulu, but specifically the Hikaru Sulu from the Kelvin timeline. So in this story, he's drawn as John Cho, who we learned in Star Trek Beyond has a husband, and they have a daughter together who is, of course, Demora Sulu, who we've seen in the Prime timeline in Star Trek Generations. So, we've got this story. He's telling a bedtime story to his daughter about this brave knight who must protect his fellow knights on this planet where the populace believes in nothing but combat and violence. And this fight ensues. It's pretty graphic. I'm wondering how much detail he went into telling this to his toddler daughter, but that's okay. And in one particular moment, he makes a move to sacrifice himself, right? He allows a feint. He lets the guy get a hit in to save the rest of his away team, which of course is a concept completely alien to these people. Basically, by the end of the story, we see that, he's been telling this as a bedtime story to his daughter with his husband there as well. And judging by the number of bandages on his body, this isn't just a story and possibly just happened that day.
Yep, that is exactly what I thought too, because I thought, what we're seeing on the page is a lot more graphic than the story that he's actually telling. So I thought, well, this was an away mission gone wrong. And I knew immediately, even with the style of drawing that this was definitely Kelvin universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I appreciated that. That it had enough defining features that I could tell which Sulu it was. So I appreciated that. And I really loved that final panel with Demora on the bed. And she's like, she's just so, you can just tell she's so hyperactive and just ready, not ready to go to sleep. No.
No, jumping on the bed, making like fencing moves, like she's playing with a sword. I have some more to say about that final panel too, but first I want to talk a bit about the drawing style throughout. So there's only a few frames that take place in the real world, which is showing like the Enterprise around the planet. And then, like we said, that final panel. In between that, in this story, it's really storybook style. You can see this as like maybe the images that that Demora is creating in her head. Like it's kind of this fanciful drawn style with these really vivid, beautiful colors. The art is really interesting in this. It's not necessarily realistic, but it's very, very comic booky, very animated, very fantastical, I guess.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of a 60s comic style of drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So I had no complaints about that. I thought it was beautifully retro and interesting. And yet you could still tell that it was Sulu. So I have no qualms with that. I just thought it was an interesting choice, and I think it fit the story.
Now this final panel, I think we need to point out several things in the room because this is great. There's several toy tribbles and that sort of thing, but on the bed is a plush Moopsie. Oh my God, it's a Moopsie.
I was looking at it and going, wait, what? What? Oh, that is a Moopsie.
And I think the sheets are supposed to have Moopsies on them too, right?
Probably.
Like they've got that same little face on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I've got my issue right here. Let me just. Yeah, those look like a Moopsie. Yep, it's got the face. Little Moopsie faces. That's so funny. That is so funny. Yeah, because obviously that has to be a Moopsie plushie. Otherwise, they would all be just piles of skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one thing I also want to point out with this story is I love the fact that, and this is a hallmark of the stories we're going to read, I think, throughout this issue, it's featuring this character who is gay, but it's not like focused on that fact. It's just showing this family moment of two men and their daughter. And I think that's really central to one of the great things I loved about this whole issue was it just, the cliche, they're just like us, right? Mm-hmm. Like people are people. They have families, they have day-to-day lives, they have crises they go through, they have wonderful family moments. And that's just showing what this is. And I love that. I thought that was a great choice.
I agree, because that's, I think, another reason why this particular issue exists is just to remind people that this is normal.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter what has been programmed into your brain, you can change your programming. You have to choose to do it, but you can change it. And so having all of these people just presented as, people, is exactly what should be happening in this issue.
It's very similar to how Stamets and Culber were presented to audiences in season 1 of Discovery.
Yes.
Right? Like you kind of saw them interact a couple times, but you really had no idea they were a couple until that famous scene where they're brushing their teeth together. And it's just this sweet, homey family moment between them, mm-hmm. and that was lovely. And I get that very similar vibe in this one.
Agree, because this is normal.
Well, let's move on to the second story in this issue then. Lady Luck by Vida Ayala with art by Liana Kangas. This one features Raffi at an Academy reunion, so class of 2375. And we kind of learn that over the years, she's had to diminish herself. She's had to play down her accomplishments, both while she was at the Academy and afterwards, because of her role in Starfleet intelligence. And she was kind of being groomed for that early on. So her instructors and stuff were, keeping her accomplishments on the down low, I guess, which has made for this situation where her former classmates all kind of make fun of her and poke at her, and it's just really frustrating. I have some things to say about that. Mm-hmm. We also have 7 of 9 showing up as her date, and this adds to kind of what's going on here by eliciting these bigoted reactions from the other Starfleet officers there due to her Borg nature. And so this takes place at a time when Raffi is not in Starfleet, or supposedly not in Starfleet. And 7 of 9, of course, is also not. She's with the Fenris Rangers at this time and has been refused a spot in the Academy and stuff. I do love that, they're poking at them, and then 7 of 9 snaps back at this one particular captain because apparently she's been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into allegations of unauthorized trade of Starfleet tech. And she makes her believe that she as a Borg has hacked into her files to find this out and is exposing her, and 7 of 9 storms off. I've got to say, my favorite part in this comic, by the way, is where she's protesting, she hacked into my files, and this other captain's like, Christ, Tura, she didn't hack into anything. You hit reply all and sent your sketchy message to everyone in this room an hour ago. That was the best.
Oh, it was fantastic.
Oh, man.
Really just putting that one in her place, and oh my God, have I known people like that in my time.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
That was so good. So yeah, Raffi chases after 7, and with the help of some of her classmates here, manages to catch up with her in her ship before they fly off together. And it's apparently to be continued in the audio drama No Man's Land, which is interesting. I did listen to that quite a while ago by Kirsten Beyer and Mike Johnson. And I'd like to listen to it again now to see how well this slots into where they're at the beginning of that story. Anyway, yeah, this was an interesting one. What are your thoughts?
This one was very frustrating for me.
Mm-hmm. I think probably for some of the same reasons I have,
yeah.
But we'll see.
Yeah. Just conduct unbecoming of Starfleet officers, for one. But, this isn't the first time we've seen that type of behavior, but it seemed to be a lot more shall we say, widespread in this group.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I spent the entire story going, Raffi, you don't have to do this.
Yeah.
You don't have to go to these stupid things. Why do you do that? Because she's acting like if I don't go, it sends more of a signal than if I did. And I'm like, no, actually it doesn't. It does not.
Mm-hmm.
Just don't go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think this came up in a recent discussion we had about a Star Trek Prodigy episode as well. This whole Starfleet exceptionalism thing where there's no economic incentive to be, richer than someone else, but they've replaced it with this like, oh, I'm better skilled at this thing, and so I get to hold that over you, like Nova Squadron or Red Squad in the Academy and stuff. And it feels like that kind of thing rearing its ugly head here again, which I guess makes sense because it's an Academy reunion. It feels to me like at those events, everybody reverts back to where they were at the time, which blows my mind as to why that happens and who enjoys that aspect of it. I have no idea. Yeah, that was frustrating. And then, of course, the bigotry against Seven as a Borg, which we've seen a lot elsewhere in Star Trek as well. And like that actually kind of makes sense to me. There's a lot of deep scars within Starfleet and the Federation from the Borg, right? We've seen that on televised Trek. We've also seen what popped in my head as well is like Starfleet's reaction to Odo a lot when, as Garrick says, they don't know him as well as we do. He's just a changeling, right? So like, I get that, but like, it still is just disgusting to see on such naked display here.
It really is. And disappointing that people would still act this way in that day and age. We're supposed to be better. The interesting thing is that it's a metaphor for what's actually the crux of it is these two women are together. And that would be the thing that people are going to be up in arms about. Are they going to be up in arms about all the other things, about the fact that she's Borg? No. People will be up in arms about these two women being together. So they just took that off. They took that away and put it in a different context with being racist against Borg, which is just, again, so frustrating because I'm like, I hope you all get assimilated. I hope you all get assimilated and then get freed so you can know what it's like and shut your mouths from now on.
Yeah, I did like Captain Price at the end, who held up Seven's ship, even though Seven wasn't going anywhere. She was actually waiting for Raffi the whole time. But he held up Seven's ship so that Raffi could catch up with her. And Raffi even has a little bit of a conversation with him saying that she's surprised considering his history with the Borg. And he says, well, working under Admiral Janeway's made me soft. So I'm glad Janeway's out there. Probably like anytime someone says some kind of sideways comment, she just turns on her heel and gets in their face and tells them what's what. Like, I love that she's out there doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Showing the importance of allyship and good allyship as well, right?
Yes. I could just see her doing it. I can see her in my mind's eye doing it. I can hear her voice. I can see her facial expression. You don't mess with Janeway.
Absolutely. The other thing I want to say about this comic in particular is the art style is very simple. Like, it's simple lines, but used very well. So there's some things like backgrounds and uniforms are a little bit more kind of whatever. But like, for something that the artist has down, Raffi's face in every single panel she appears in, she, with just a few simple lines, looks so much like Raffi. It's uncanny. I love it.
Yeah, and that is really hard to do. It takes someone with a great deal of talent to be able to evoke that with so little detail. And this actually was, if the previous art style was more 60s, this is more reminiscent of an 80s style of comic without being cheesy like some of the 80s styles were. Yeah. And so I find it interesting, all these different styles of art in this issue, because they all remind me of different things. And I think each style fits the story extremely well.
I'm glad you brought up the 80s style because I hadn't thought of that, but I did just recently read The Dark Knight Returns for the first time. And yeah, you're right. Like that was written in the 80s and it's very, very similar to this as well. I hadn't thought of that, but that's great. Even the like odd panels and kind of some of the way you have to maneuver your way through a page sometimes.
Yes.
I noticed a lot of pages in The Dark Knight Returns does that sort of thing.
That's another thing I liked about this particular story is the layout, because it didn't stay the same. It just they did what they did with it. I mean, some are just your standard type of 6-panel pages, and then some of them is like, oh, there's this triangle down in the right hand corner for some reason, and it's just it's interesting. It's visually interesting. It never gets boring. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, the story rubbed me the wrong way, but the art and the presentation, the layout, I enjoyed very much.
I echo all of that for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed the relationship between the two characters. I think had a chance to shine a bit here, but yeah, the behavior of some of the people involved was pretty disappointing.
Kind of like, today. In our world right now. Disappointing.
Yeah. This episode of Positively Trek is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. A special thank you to our Constitution class supporters, Jim Stoffel, Joyce Mirren, and Paul D. Kinnear. To help out with the podcast, visit patreon.com/positivelytrek, where for a small monthly donation, you can get early access to ad-free episodes, shoutouts, exclusive content, associate producer credits, and more. Thank you so much for listening, and live long and prosper. Well, let's move on to story number 3, Facemaker by Mags Visaggio, with art by Tench and colors by J.P. Jordan again. So this one features Christine Chapel prior to her time aboard the Enterprise in Strange New Worlds. And she's working on her method of physical transformation that we saw in the first episode of Strange New Worlds. And kind of her relationship with her girlfriend at the time and her assistance in using Starfleet technology to kind of realize her vision for this new technology, which ends up being called quantum encoded regulation for precision epigenetic modification. Say that 10 times fast.
No, thank you.
And her kind of maybe bending of the scientific method and ethics to make this technology work, and her workaround for getting around Starfleet's genetic modification laws from the eugenics wars and all of that stuff. This was a fun issue, and again, one that is not focused on necessarily the relationship or the nature of the relationship between these two characters, just showing it as a regular relationship where one partner's helping out another and they're living their lives. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, there's a lot of science speak in this one.
Yes.
Not a complaint.
No, not at all. I actually, like, when I was done, I had to go back and check, was this written by Dr. Aaron McDonald? And no, it wasn't. It was Mags Visaggio, but I was seriously thought, this is very, is this Rock Talk talking about science or something?
Just about. I mean, Mags did an amazing job on the science speak. And one thing that actually tickled me was when I think it was Christine talking about how CRISPR had been made illegal.
Yes.
Yes, it should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, I love the real world science that's peppered through this. And I'm not a geneticist or anything like that, but everything they were saying, it was techno-babblish, but it all made sense, kind of, right?
Yeah.
So it was hard to follow at times because it was so dense with the science, but I really liked it. It felt like two experts in their field just going off on their subjects they know about, and I really appreciated that. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, and thanks for not dumbing it down. I appreciate that too.
Well, I also, of course, have to call out Dr. Phlox.
I know!
That was so great. He's the like head of this research department, basically, that Christine is working for. My favorite moment of his was when Christine coins the title Quantum Encoded Regulation for Precision Epigenetic Modification. And Phlox says, Kerpem. Sounds like a new variety of Tikelian poker. Texas Kerpem.
I could hear it in John Billingsley's voice.
Totally. Yeah. The artwork also is really good. Like, it's not like photo real by any stretch. It's very cartoony, very comic-y, as it should be. But I really liked the style. I thought it worked really well. The one thing I will say is Phlox absolutely looks exactly like Phlox.
Right? I was so pleased. With Phlox. That first panel where he shows up, I'm just like, oh, my Phlox, my Phlox. And I keep doing this. I don't know. I just keep doing this, but I keep noticing with each different style, it is reminiscent of a style that already exists without being exactly that style. And I appreciate that because this one says 90s, late 90s, early 2000s to me.
Yeah, totally. I could see that as well, for sure. I really, really like this. The big eyes and the kind of,
Yes.
There's something very reminiscent of that here.
Yeah, I had to read it a couple of times so that I could really try to grasp the concepts that were being debated there. And yeah, some of it is technobabble, but some of it is definitely real world applications. And there's that really fine line between temporary disguise and augmentation. They have to try and walk that line.
I also liked that they kind of explained a little bit about that technology because it felt a little bit anachronistic in that first episode of Strange New Worlds, where like we see after that they do like surgical modification rather than just like hypospray and the person changes. So it was kind of neat that like Christine runs through all of those different possibilities and that she's trying something different and maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't, but it kind of made that feel a little bit more fitting in universe, I guess, in that first episode. So
yep.
The best stories always smooth over issues with canon, right?
Right.
That dreaded C word.
Canon can bite my shiny metal butt.
Well, if anything, this story proves what I always say. It just takes a tiny bit of brain power to think, like, how can I make this fit, rather than looking for all the possible ways that something might violate stuff. Why not instead take that brain power and think like, interesting. That's not what I would expect there. How can I make this fit? Or how could this possibly fit in? And I think that's great. Like some of my favorite authors do that with like Christopher L. Bennett and Dayton Ward in the novels are masters at doing that. So
they are. Yeah. They truly are.
Let's jump to the next story then. So Innovation Interruption by Stephanie Williams with art by Denny Minone. We see at the beginning that this is set aboard the Discovery, but is this the mirror Discovery? Because the registry number is mirrored on the hull. I don't know. Did they not catch that? Anyway, it's funny because reading it, I actually didn't catch that, and I'm just noticing it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, the number is not there so that the people on the ship can see it. The number is there so that approaching ships can scan it and see it.
Well, it's not just that. It's actually mirrored, too. I feel like this is the Discovery version of the ambulance. This is so the rear view mirror of the starship in front of them can... Oh, it's the NCC.
Oh, that's so funny.
First of all, we have Jett Reno, which automatically, I mean, whatever issues I have with this story, it's bumped up a couple points by that. We have this experimental technology is being tested aboard Discovery. These self-guided, nano-sized spiders, which actually seem pretty big for nano-sized, but okay.
Right.
They escape, and they eventually have to be trapped by Stamets and Reno, and Reno kind of just stumbles into the situation. She's not actually supposed to be taking part in this, but she helps out and traps these spiders. In the meantime, we have this thread running through where Reno has an iPod, a very old model of iPod, even weirdly enough, old by our standards.
Yeah, click wheel iPod, man.
Yeah, which I could see her having.
Absolutely.
Like, it kind of works. But this iPod, we learn at the end, contains the only recording of Reno's wife singing their wedding song. And we, of course, know from the series that Reno lost her wife in the Klingon War at one point. So obviously a very important possession that she's trying to repair and thankfully succeeds. And the other character in the story, of course, is Stamets, who's hosting these scientists, I guess, that are working on this project. Yeah, I don't know. I love Reno. I love her quips. I think she's written really well in this. Stamets is written really well as Stamets as well, I think. The story I have a few issues with, but I'm curious your thoughts on this one.
It feels like a Scooby-Doo episode.
Mm-hmm.
That's my problem with it.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah. And it's like, is this Scooby-Doo? What is this? And the art style kind of lends itself to that.
A little bit, yeah.
It's a bit more juvenile. It wasn't my favorite story, even though, I always like Reno and Stamets trading barbs, and I don't think they did it enough, frankly, for my tastes. The art is, I'm not complaining that the art is bad. The art is not bad, but it is like this weird cross between your typical American style comic and anime, or really it should be called manga, because manga is print, anime is movie / television, motion picture, I guess is the best way to put it. So it's kind of like, would I see these and know that this was Stamets and Reno? Not so much.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. And again, with the spiders, too big. They're too big. And I do think they shine a light on it. Yeah, these guys come in and think that they're going to get it right the first time every time because they're young and they don't know yet. They haven't figured it out yet. But failure is the biggest motivator that there is. So still, spiders. Why spiders?
My other problem with this as well is the scientist says we've been working on experimental tech that uses programmable matter autonomously.
Yeah, how's that?
Now,
that's not in this century.
Yeah, no, they're wearing their old uniforms. Discovery is clearly in the 23rd century because they did wear those uniforms for a little while in the 32nd century, but the visiting scientists are also wearing those uniforms. So this is, I think, very clearly in the 23rd century.
Agree.
Programmable matter, basically when somebody said programmable matter to Tilly in season 3, she was like, what now? Like, this is not something they should have or know about.
Yeah, that's, I'm just going to call this as an alternate universe. Not mirror universe per se, but, if you've watched season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy, you know that there are many quantum realities out there besides just the Prime universe and the mirror universe. So, let's just count it in one of those.
No, that makes sense. I kind of like that, especially a universe in which, they've put a mirrored registry number on the hull. So
it's a test for everybody who works the bridge. Can you read these numbers and letters? Tell me what they say, or you're not on bridge duty anymore.
The one thing I will say that I liked about this was a little bit of back and forth between Stamets and Reno, where, he's kind of nosing in about what she's doing with this old ancient technology, this iPod. Stamets says, "I'm merely indulging my curiosity." And Reno says, "You heard about curiosity in cats, right?" And Stamets says, "I'm aware that most tend to focus solely on the initial portion of that particular adage," which I didn't actually know when I read that, so I had to look it up. I credit this story with making me look that up because it doesn't spoon feed that to you. It just gives you that little... So apparently the entire adage is curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back, which I didn't know. And I can totally hear Stamets and Reno having that back and forth. And kudos for getting those voices right there. So I'll give the credit where it's due there.
Yeah, I think we ought to start saying the second part of that little what would you call it, adage, that little adage. Leave it to humans to take things out of context and say things wrong until they're right, which is why we have words like card shark instead of card sharp, because card shark makes absolutely no sense. I'm sorry if I've done this rant before. But there are so many things that if you do them wrong long enough, they become right. But I will never, ever be on board with using literally and saying it as figuratively. And even in the dictionary now, it says that it can be used as a way.
Nope.
No, it can't.
I reject that.
No, it can't.
I reject it. Reject it completely.
Exactly, because that's the whole word. That's the meaning of the word. Literal, actual. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. If you're saying, I literally could not get out of bed, that means you could not make your body move out of the bed. That's what that means. Stop doing this, people. Please stop ruining the language. Please.
There are so many adages as well that like that one. And like Curiosity Killed the Cat, I did not know was one of these ones that we've cut the end off of. But one of my favorites is when you have the same idea as someone and they chime in with great minds think alike. I always add the second part, and fools seldom differ. Mm-hmm. That's the whole great minds think alike and fools seldom differ. And I think it's important we remember that. So
yes. Yes, indeed.
But now I'm like wondering how many sayings are there out there that just have a second part that has fallen away that we don't know about? Like people in glass houses should not throw stones, but they can throw rubber balls. I don't know. Like what else is there?
I don't know. Rubber balls can really do some damage. I mean, the way they bounce, they can get a good velocity going, so I wouldn't necessarily throw that in a glass house either. Those little pom-pom balls made out of yarn, sure.
Oh,
go for that.
Yeah.
Go for that.
Maybe like don't look a gift horse in the mouth unless it comes from the Trojans. We should move on to our final story in this issue now, Risian Rendezvous by Hannah Rose May, with art by Jack Lawrence and colors by Rebecca Nolte. And this one is a Lower Deck story.
Yes.
So what a wonderful way to close out this issue. And the story is of Mariner's first date with Jennifer, the Andorian that they were briefly involved together for a while there until unpleasantness at the end of season 3, I believe,
indeed.
of Lower Decks. But so yeah, this is their first date on Risa. They have shore leave together, but things are not going well. They keep encountering strife on this date. You know, they're encountering rowdy partygoers. They're getting split up by Shax and Ta'ana, who are sitting between them on the shuttle. And it's just like typical crowded, noisy stuff, which is not fun. But they do at one point have to take part in a dance-off to save some fellow crew members from a life of indentured servitude, which is an interesting story turn.
Of course. It's the
Lower
Cerritos.
Decks. What are you going to do?
Yeah, it's the Cerritos.
Yeah.
What, I mean, is this a surprise to anyone?
They do win the dance-off with, having the time of my life.
I know. Like they're going to do a dirty
That's
dancing
great.
lift. They're going to do it. They're going to do it. And
That
they
was
did.
wonderful. I love Jennifer's worried look as she's running towards Mariner as well. And Mariner is just like shaking, holding her up like, oh. But it's enough to get them to win the contest. They get separated at that point though, but they do eventually reconnect, and the night ends with a lovely kiss on the beach. I love this one. I love Lower Decks. I love Mariner. I love her Hawaiian shirt and her talking about suns out, guns out. She's great.
Yeah, it just reconfirms my theory that no one ever has a good time on Risa except for Hoshi Sato. Had trouble saying her name today. Hoshi Sato. Because let's think about all the times that they've talked about Risa, how someone has been kidnapped and reprogrammed on the way to Risa or on the way home from Risa, the weather thing is malfunctioning on Risa, and so they've got nothing but electrical storms. I mean, honestly, I will never go to Risa, you guys. Because almost every representation of it I've seen. And to be fair, with the rest of the Enterprise people who were on Risa with Hoshi, did any of them have a good time? No, just Hoshi.
No.
More power to you, girl. And more power to you,
Absolutely.
Mariner and Jennifer, R.I.P. Not that she's dead, but the relationship is.
Yeah. I hold out hope for those two kids. I think they had a good thing. She needs to smarten up and apologize to Mariner. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, she's left it kind of long to do that now.
Yeah, that's true.
And the thing is, she should have groveled. Absolutely should have groveled.
Mm-hmm.
But, she basically just showed Mariner she didn't trust her, and that's not cool.
Well, yeah, this is a fairly simple story. It's just a lovely first date gone wrong story that ended well. I actually really connected with this story. Like my first date with a girl in high school, I remember, it was awful. I had the wrong address, was late picking her up. We went to a movie that was like sold out without assigned seats. So we sat through the movie in opposite ends of the theater. It was not a good first date, but it ended well, like this one. So I kind of connected with this story. I think it worked well.
Yeah, I didn't have a lot of good dates in my life until I met Dave. But
Nice.
But before that, they were all... I didn't actually date that much, but I think the one that sticks in my mind the most as the worst date I've ever been on, it wasn't even so much the activities or anything like that, but it was a double date, and I didn't know this guy. I'd been set up. I didn't know this guy very well, but he and his friend, and they had this other woman with them, and she was from Sweden, and she was tall, tan, perfect in every way. And they paid way more attention to her, both of them, than they did me. And I'm just like,
Boo.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Oh, that's not fun. I'd go back in time and smack him upside the head. That's not cool.
Oh, the person I am now, I would just be like, yeah, obviously you guys don't care about me being here, so could one of you take me home? Because I don't care about any of this anymore. The woman was absolutely lovely. She was, I mean, not just physically beautiful. She was a very nice person. I had nothing against her at all. One more thing I want to say about this particular story. I really enjoyed seeing a score there.
Yeah, that was fun.
Yes, and I know the difference between the bird people, because scores, no groin plumage.
That's the big thing. Yeah.
Yep.
No groin plumage.
Yeah. You gotta know these things.
Yeah. I think for me, my favorite panel would have to be how sad the two Orion dancers look as they're walking away after Jennifer and Mariner beat them in the dance off.
Yeah. Somebody was probably playing that actual song.
I just love how like dancing is their life. And they're just like, oh, what do we even have now?
That's what happens when you focus too much on one thing, guys. You gotta have varied interests.
Gotta diversify.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just for stock portfolios, y'all.
I do love how it ended too, where Mariner's kicking herself. So much for my hot date. And then that's what Jennifer overheard. Oh, hot date, huh? And she's like, what? No, what? And she just asks permission to kiss her. And yeah, that's lovely. It was a really sweet story.
Shax and Ta'ana, though, come on, read the room. You have to sit between them? You couldn't sit on one side of them? Ugh.
They're a little focused on their own thing. They're a little oblivious.
Aren't they always?
So yeah, I feel like this story was maybe not quite as deep as some of the other stories, but I still really enjoyed it. I think it worked really well for this. So
yeah, well, it worked well for the Lower Decks type of storytelling, for sure.
Yeah.
And it was fun. And the art style is done pretty well. I would say it's not quite as exact as the actual Lower Deck style, but it wasn't... I mean, okay, so you know how when people are painting an ice cream van or whatever and they can't use licensed characters, so they make a character that's just slightly off, but you know that's Donald Duck, right?
Yeah.
Some of the panels made me feel a little bit like that, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this.
There's a few shots, especially of Mariner, where she's just a little off somehow.
Just slightly off, yeah. Same thing with Boimler, because there was an early Boimler, and I'm just like, that's not quite right. The hair isn't quite right. And that's, I'm just being picky, because...
Oh, of course.
I love my Boims. I love my Lower Decks. I love my Star Trek.
Well, what did you think of this issue overall? All five, of these stories put together. What did you think of this Star Trek Celebrations?
I think that it was a great way to tell stories with queer people in the forefront without making it about their queerness.
Mm-hmm.
And to just show these people as people, because that's what they are.
Yeah.
And I think that it was done really well. I was a little disappointed to find on the cover, Adira and Hugh and not have them in one of the stories.
Yeah.
That was, just needed more people on the cover. And since, it's part of the Stamets / Culber family, that it's like, don't put them on the cover and then not have them in the issue.
Well, it's even a little bit more so when you look at some of the variant covers. So cover B actually features Hugh and Stamets embracing, and that's they're the only ones on the cover. So the fact that nothing in the story really showcases their relationship at all is interesting. And again, I have mixed feelings on that, because the fact that there are so many queer characters in Star Trek now means that we don't get them all featured in here. But I'm also sad that, Hugh wasn't in there, Adira wasn't there, Gray wasn't there. But, the characters they did show, I think the stories worked really well.
Yes.
But, like I said, I'm just really of two minds of it, because why won't those characters in there? Oh, because there's so many characters, they can't get to them all. That's awesome. There's so many queer characters in Star Trek now.
Yeah, I do like the regular cover art, because, I just get the standard cover art. The art is really beautiful and really evokes each character's physical appearance.
Yeah.
Because when I looked at that, I'm like, wait. That's Kelvin Sulu. I do love me some John Cho. I'd freaking watch him in anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I just saw him in a trailer for a horror movie, Afraid, that's coming soon. And when I saw him in that, I was like, oh man, I miss the Kelvin timeline folks, which I didn't really think I'd say, but I kind of want to see them again sometime.
Yeah, I wouldn't be adverse to it. Overall, I really enjoyed this issue. It's beautifully done in the way that they told the stories for the most part. And I think it's important that they did it the way they did it, again, to show everyone just as people.
Yeah, I would echo that 100%. That's probably my favorite takeaway from this is, it's showcasing these queer characters, but it's not focused simply on that. It's showing them in their day-to-day lives, being professionals, being partners, being period. There you go. That's it, right? And I love that. I think that's wonderful. So
agree. More of that, please.
Yeah, here. Absolutely. Which is, I think, something Star Trek's gotten better, well, way better than it used to be at, and continues to get better at, I think, too.
Yeah.
So
Still need to do more.
Yeah, with Discovery gone, right? That was such a huge stepping stone in this. So I really, really hope that there's more of that sort of thing waiting in the wings to step up, maybe in Starfleet Academy and some of the other projects coming down the line. So
yeah, well, if you look at this cover, more than half the people on it are from Discovery.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's start weighing those scales better, guys.
Here. Well, that's it. That's our coverage for Star Trek Celebrations. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we did. So please let us know in the comments of this episode or on the Positively Trek discussion group on Facebook. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you, Brandi, so much for joining me for this episode. It was so much fun having you back.
Oh, thank you so much. It was so much fun being back, and you gave me one of the best laughs I've ever had.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and we will see you in another episode soon. And until then, as always, stay positive. Positively Trek is produced and edited by me, Dan Gunther, and co-produced by Barry DeFord on Treaty 8 territory, the home of the Beaver, Cree, Dene, and Métis people, whose histories, languages, and cultures we respect. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations.